it's really less about the number of, the
You,
number of millions under
mm,
management or the number of units. And I look at it as how many people are you helping, right? How many
yep.
people are you helping either earn passive income, save on their taxes, diversify their portfolio, get into different markets, educate on real estate as an investment vehicle. So I really look at it less on the assets under management and more about the number of people we can impact, because I think the business ultimately is a people business.
And welcome to
You're listening to the We Love Equity Real Estate Show, a podcast that discusses the intricacies of real estate investing with your host, Marcus E. Maloney. Marcus is a real estate investor best known for being the equity king. He's been awarded that moniker because he and his team find amazing real estate deals. He will be talking with investors who have done some transformational things in the real estate industry. They'll discuss their process, their strategies, and how their investments transform their lives and the communities they invest in. We welcome you to the We Love Equity Real Estate Show.
Welcome to another show of the We Love Equity Real Estate Show. And on this week's show, we have John Casmon. John Casmon is an accomplished multifamily operator and syndicator and general partner over $85 million in apartment complexes. He's the founder of Casmon Capital, the co-founder of the Midwest Real Estate Summit, and he is the illustrious host of the Target Market Insights. So family, welcome to the show, John Casmon. John, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Marcus. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Thank you, man. Thank you. You know what? I was really impressed with you, and I wanted to have you on the show after meeting you at the Midwest Real Estate Summit, and your story was really fascinating, man. And I thought it would be a great story for our listeners to hear. So I know I didn't do your bio and your introduction any justice. So fill in the missing pieces here for me. How are you, John, and who are you?
Listen, you did a great job with the bio, and it's crazy, man. You hear a bio, right? A bio is really just like a quick synopsis of things you've accomplished, and sometimes it throws me off because you say things like the 85 million in real estate apartments, and I'm like, what doesn't feel like 85 million real estate apartments, But nonetheless, all these things are facts that we do, and I think it just really demonstrates kind of what we've been able to build in a few years. But my background's in marketing. I came into corporate America as a marketer, worked for some large brands, worked in the automotive industry, and then went to the agency side, and always saw real estate as a way to, one, offset any potential risk from a W-2. And I worked at General Motors when we went through bankruptcy. So that became a real thing for me. I've also watched parents, get let go or, go on strike. So having financial stability has always been a really important thing for me, going back to childhood. So real estate was kind of an outlet to establish that, where even if it wasn't that I could completely live off of it, I didn't have to worry about paying all my bills, or I had some other source of income. So I kind of looked at that, started building my own personal portfolio. And then after we got to around a $1.5 million portfolio, the issue was that I had a lot of equity, but I didn't have a lot of cash. So I was saving all my money to buy more properties. And I started to realize that, this was really just a long trek to reach our goals. But then on the same token, I would meet investors, or I would talk to friends and family, and they would look at what we were doing and say, that's great, I love it. And I would tell them how to do it. And they're like, well, I don't want to do it. I want the benefits, but I don't want to actually do it myself. So at that moment, a light bulb kind of went off to say, well, man, I need capital to do more deals. They want to invest, but don't want to actually do the management. Maybe we should partner together. And at that moment, I wanted to learn more about what it meant to partner. I didn't want to take anybody's money, without really educating myself and really putting myself in position to be a great, steward of other people's money. Because while I was succeeding, I didn't know why I was succeeding, right? You learn more from failure than you do from success. And I'm not saying I wanted to fail, but at least wanted to know why I was winning before we started to work with other people.
Absolutely. And that's something key that you said there, because a lot of people can feel like, well, I'm winning, I can't lose. But everybody knows that there's around that corner, it could be one major catastrophe that can take you down. And being a good steward, of other people's money is absolutely, the direction that you need to be in, especially, when you're dealing with, multi-million-dollar projects and everything like that. So I know you stated that, you have a strong marketing background. Kudos to you, man. You got to have that in real estate. I always tell people, real estate is not just real estate, but it's more so marketing on the front end, because that's how you find your deals. So transitioning from marketing and GM and being in, the Fortune 500 company, how did you make that transition to real estate?
So it was slow over time, right? So I went to Chicago and I worked at an agency. So I worked there, and on the side, I started building my portfolio. I mean, that's the beauty of real estate, right? You don't have to quit and jump into it day one. You can invest passively. You can build a small rental portfolio. So I started with that house hack. I bought a 2-unit building. I lived in one unit and I rented out the other. It was pretty easy to manage since I lived there,
Hmm.
and we created some equity. Once we kind of created the equity, we refinanced. We actually bought a 3-unit building, managed that one. We bought an 8-unit building using the equity from the first project.
Okay.
And then we got into a couple rehab projects. So we were able to do all this kind of on the side because we were self-managing. The 8-unit building, I did hire a property management company to come on. I wanted to
Okay.
gain that experience and understand what was it like to actually manage a property
Manage it.
management company
Yeah.
versus doing it all myself. And from there, like I said, we started to scale, but it started off really with just doing it on the side. It doesn't take a crazy amount of hours, but it does take work. And it also depends on if you have the capital. I mean, I was saving 6 figures to invest in these deals for the most part. So that may not be really feasible for a lot of people. So there are other ways to get involved and get started. But if you have the time, if you have the energy, great. But that was before I had kids too. Once I
Okay.
started having kids, my time started to become a bit more valuable, and running across town to go, check on the toilet or whatever. That wasn't really how I wanted to spend my time. And my wife and I, we both travel for work as well. So it would come times where we were out of town and something happened, a pipe froze. I'm like, oh, I mean, there's solutions,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, they still started to weigh on me no
Weigh
matter
on you.
what. It was like, oh, what's going to happen? We're going to go out of the country for a week. All right, well, what's going to happen if they have a phone call? Who do we
Yep.
direct it to? So you have to worry about all those kind of things. So I think getting to the point where we decided to really scale and make it a real business as opposed to kind of a side hustle or second income on the side, and really making it a business is where kind of the mindset started to shift.
Okay, so you started out with a house hack, and family, if you can definitely hear the trend, the last few people that we interviewed started out with house hacks, so that's a great way to get started. And John definitely is accomplished, and he tells you and he's laying out how he got started. So you got started with the house hack, then you moved to the three unit, then the 8 unit. So managing all of that. How was it? First of all, how did you find that property manager? Because I know the first two units that you were managing yourself.
Mhm.
How did you get and how did you learn how to find a property manager, vet the property manager?
So, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's always about constant education. When we first even bought that 2 unit, by that moment, I had done a ton of research. I read multiple books. I listened to podcasts. I talked to other investors before we bought our first duplex. So,
Hmm.
one, I wanted to learn kind of on the job and get some experience doing it myself starting out there. So when it came time to hire a property management company, I had built a pretty good network just from going to networking events, things like that. So I had a handful of folks who I trusted, and I reached out to them. I said, hey, listen, I'm buying this commercial property. It's 8 units, so it's not a huge property, but it's still commercial.
Right.
Do you have a reference as far as property management companies that I should look at? So I got a couple recommendations. I also drove around the area, and saw who else was
Hmm.
managing in Chicago. If it's basically managed by a third party, they've got to put the name of the property management company on the building somewhere. So you can drive around and see which names come up the most frequently, right?
Yep.
So I would drive around the neighborhood and I would see, okay, I've seen this property management company a few times. I jot down their name and maybe check out their website and see if they had any references. So I got a list of like 10. I got that list of 10 down to like 4. And I started interviewing and doing phone calls and checking references. And there was one that kind of stood out from the other ones. And they also came with the recommendation that was most personal. So I think that went well. And they
Okay.
actually weren't on my initial list. It was a property management company who said, hey, I don't do that area. But I'll refer someone who does, that we know, like, and trust too. So I thought for a recommendation coming from someone in the industry,
Absolutely.
that carried a lot of weight, because it's like, it's one thing for an investor or someone else to say, oh, hey, these guys are pretty good. It's another thing for someone in that same industry to say, hey, these guys are pretty good.
Absolutely. And then I learned in real estate, most people are kind of leery about making those recommendations because it may fall back on them, if it turns out to go south.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you can definitely take that recommendation with a lot of weight. So how did you transition, kind of going backwards, I'm sorry. How did you
Yeah.
transition from that first house hack to the second unit? Because I know you said you're working a full-time job, you're house hacking, you and your wife. Um, how did you make that second step?
Yeah. So, I mean, our strategy was, it was fairly simple. I mean, we had the house hack. We were, I think we are paying a couple $100 of the mortgage, so we were able to save most of our income. We were pregnant with our first child. We wanted to get
Okay.
another investment property, mainly to offset the new expenses we knew we were going to incur. Um,
Yeah,
so
babies are not cheap.
they're not cheap, man. Not cheap in Chicago with childcare and everything else. So,
Yep.
so basically, what we did was we were looking for properties that didn't need as much work, right? We didn't want to go into a deep rehab or anything like that. We wanted something that was stable, pretty much turnkey, but still had some upside. And the way I saw the upside was in the community. So I was looking at different neighborhoods, and that's my thing. It's always been neighborhoods. That's why, I launched the podcast Target Market Insights. Part of it is because I'm so big on that. You talk about, locations, number one rule of
Yeah,
real estate, right? So for me, it was like, you get the location right, you can miss on other aspects and still be good. So I'm
absolutely.
always about getting the location right, because that really doesn't require anything else. So for me, I spent a lot of time trying to find that next location, and we ended up figuring out we wanted to invest in Avondale. Avondale's a neighborhood in Chicago that has grown pretty well. So
Hmm.
we bought something there. I thought the neighborhood would continue to improve and will continue to uplift rents and ultimately increase the value of the property. But then also, I looked at the current in-place rents, and I thought they were like $100 below where they should be without any work being done. So I thought that was another upside, because the units were bigger than a lot of the comps and they were getting less in rent. So I felt that there was some upside value potential without having to do anything. So we thought it was a perfect investment for us.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So, guys, just so you'll know, and so you hear, location is the number one aspect in real estate. But John was able to find, a small equity position within that property without him even doing anything, to increase that property. So, guys, definitely take good notes on that. So now you're transitioning to that 8 unit. You got the property manager, in place. So did the property manager vet the tenants? Was it occupied already? Kind of what was the stability track on that unit?
Yeah, so that one was occupied. The owner had kind of called out a couple of the challenging tenants, so we kind of knew what we were getting into a little bit there. It was more challenging than I anticipated, and I think one of the big things that I learned from that property was you can hire really good property managers, but they may not be really good for that property type. You understand what I'm
Ah,
saying?
yep.
So the property manager I hired, they were really good at B class properties. Really good at some of the higher end neighborhoods, or even just, solid neighborhoods.
Hmm.
But, I had a mix of Section 8 and a mix of market rent tenants. Not bad or anything like that necessarily. They just required a little bit more hand
Hand
holding
holding.
than the other properties I had. And I think the most of the properties that this property management company had managed before. So in doing all of that, there were things that they just missed that I would have expected them to catch or be able to navigate and help out with. So, I mean, that was really our lesson was, hey, when you hire someone, you really need to make sure you're pairing the experience with the asset type with, the assets you're buying, because just getting somebody who's got great recommendations and, they've got great experience, but if they haven't done specifically the type of property that you're buying, They may have more challenges than what you could expect.
Okay, perfect. So now I know when me and you had a conversation, you were talking about, this failed flip. So in the midst of all
You
of
gonna bring that
this,
up?
yeah, in the midst of all of this, because everybody, see the glitz and the glamour of, fixing, flipping, and everything like
Yeah.
that. And it's not for everybody, and there's a lot of challenges that come with that. So kind of let's walk through that flip that you were talking about that was a little bit challenging for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we jump into the flip, one thing is understanding who you are as an investor. I think the psyche of yourself, and who you are as an investor is an important part of making the decisions of what types of investments you want to get into. You know, I came from corporate America. We talked about that, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
came from corporate America. I'm really good at project management, overseeing business decisions, overseeing large sums of capital, investing in specific types of things. I'm not the whip cracker. I'm not the
Gotcha.
guy who, is on the job site all day long, making sure guys are really taking only 30 minutes for their lunch break. And that's not who I
Mm-hmm.
am. I work with professional environments. When I say something, people do it. And if they don't do it, there's repercussions. And when you get into flipping, it's a little bit different because you have a time clock and you need somebody who is watching the crew and make sure that one, doing what they're supposed to do, and everything is moving and progressing accordingly. So anyway, I ended up having a partnership. So I knew that wasn't me going into it. So I didn't try to step into that role. I partnered with somebody who was a contractor who had a system in place, and I went and watched some of his crew work, and I went and visited 5 of his properties. So I
Okay.
saw various stages of renovations, from 2 that were finished, one that was basically on the market, a couple that had been one that had been drywalled, one that just had studs up and electric and plumbing work going in, and one that was basically just demo.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw like his system and the way he does it, and he had a kind of a cookie cutter approach. So I'm like, okay, well, hey, he's got all this part down. This is great. The numbers, they weren't what I was, trained to see, but I was trained by books and podcasts, and he was actually doing it. So
Doing it.
I kind of stepped back and said, well, I'm gonna defer to the guy who's got the real world experience. And I would say for your listeners, it's probably a bit of a mistake, definitely a mistake. I would say is never disregard your own intelligence on a subject. While someone might have more experience, you need to use that as an opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah.
If you know something or you learn something, even if I reading it or talking to other people, use that as an opportunity to ask them why they do something a certain way, and just hear what they say back to you. If they have something that makes a ton of sense, then okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if what they're saying doesn't sound
Don't
like
add up.
it don't add up, or there's something missing, that's the time when you weigh them red flags.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in short, he was the way he had it structured, the margins were super slim. They were super slim. And because he was doing so many, I think the assumption that was made by a lot of partners was that, hey, we are buying in bulk. We're buying materials
Yep.
in bulk. We're doing things in bulk. So you can't really look at it as the cost for one project, because we're doing 5 at a time. So there's a cost of 5 at a time, and there's a cost for one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it one, it's going to look crazy to you. But if you look at it as 5, that's where the efficiencies are. So that made sense to me. But I think ultimately, it was just he ended up not being the right partner thing. He kind of slipped up a little bit and took
Mm-hmm.
on too much work, and became a bit of a challenge, a bit of a nightmare. So we had to pick it up and finish it up. It was not a great project for me at all. And the
Okay.
biggest thing I learned too is, why we love multifamily, because, when you get into rehabs or single family rehabs in particular, you're not making any money while this project is going on. You only make money the day you sell. So
Yep.
that's it. That's it. So you're always racing against the clock to sell. With multifamily, even if you're doing a reposition or value add play, you're getting money day one from the existing tenants. And the way we do our model, we're buying properties that are 85 to 95% occupied. So we're getting good
Mm-hmm.
cash flow day one out of these properties while we're implementing our value add strategy. So I don't have to worry about those kind of issues sinking the deal. We don't have to worry about a contract just completely blowing. There's still other issues that you come up with,
Right.
but the other piece to it is now you're dealing with more professional folks, because you're dealing with one contractor who is living off of these 5 deals. Well, who knows? He might either feel good and he made his money, so now he's happy and he's slowing down on the work, or
Yep.
maybe he took on too much and he's not properly capitalized. But you're really putting a whole lot of business acumen into a guy who really never went to business school, doesn't really understand, the financial side of things. He's a contractor. So I think that's the other thing. When you deal with apartments, you're dealing with professional companies who have lines of credit, who have money in the bank, who have employees, who care about their reputation, who only work on commercial assets. So you're just dealing with a much higher caliber of individuals versus, the one contractor who you hoping could get the job done on time and on budget, which never seems to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I tell the listeners is, one of the worst numbers is in business is the number of one. Because if everything is solely the responsibility of one person, when that one person steps away or you have a falling out with that one person, now the whole project, is deemed almost useless. You had to pick it up and run with it. So that failure actually, lends you to saying, hey, you know what, I need to focus on multifamily. That's the area, and that's the reason why I got into real estate versus trying to do a one-off here and there. And I find a lot of people getting started, that's one of the things that they do. They say, okay, well, I want to be a multifamily investor, but I'm gonna start with wholesale, and then I'm gonna go to fix and flips, and then I'm gonna go to residential rentals, then finally get to multifamily. Can you expound a little bit on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is the gurus, right? I mean, that's what the gurus teach. They teach you, hey, if you ain't got no money, start out with wholesaling. Go do that until you can make enough money to fix and flip. Once you can fix and flip, then you can buy a rental, and you just keep doing that until you can get into multifamily. And that's the guru's pitch to you. Like, you don't need money to start. We'll teach you everything. That's bull. Like, it's one, even if it does work, it's so slow. And I think it's disrespectful to wholesaler. Wholesaling is a very difficult thing because being a wholesaler, you have to understand construction to a basic amount to understand at least how a rehabber is looking at it. So if you tell me, hey, property, is available for 70,000, you put 40,000 into it and it'll be worth 180, you need to already know, is that 30 or 40,000 accurate? What is that based off of?
Absolutely.
Where you getting your numbers from, and where you pull his ARV from? So you have to understand a lot to be able to put that together. So I just think that you should focus on ways to get directly where you want to go. And in this instance, I would say if you're interested in multifamily, house hacking is an easy way to get into it. Another easy way is joint venture with somebody. If you have capital, if you're a busy professional, become a limited partner on a deal or JV on a deal. But get in that way. You gain some experience, gain expertise while you're really getting the benefits of it. Hire a coach or mentor. Help somebody out. Try to join the team where you can provide value to them. There has to be something that you do really well. We talked about marketing. Can you help them find a deal? Can you help them with some of their marketing communications? Can you help with some of their investor relations? There's got to be, can you help underwrite?
Right.
Can you help with, accounting? I don't know, but you figure out what value you can add and then see how do you get involved to get that real world experience. But I think that's going to be more practical than trying to go out and flip houses or wholesale, especially if you're not passionate about it and if you don't have a desire to really be doing that. I mean, it's one thing if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. I don't mean it like that, but if you have other options to get on the pathway, I would say explore the right avenues to get there from A to B, as opposed to going to all the way around it to a whole bunch of different tactics just to get there. I mean, again, that was from a personal standpoint. If I could go back, I would have solely focused on trying to educate myself and get really good at working with other people to bring capital to my deal versus trying to flip. Like, I lost more money and time trying to flip property to make money for my deals than if I would have just either waited by myself or started just talking to more investors.
Gotcha. So, and you spoke of, focusing on raising capital. How did you get into, transitioning into the syndications and the larger multifamily deals? Kind of help us understand, how did you go from point A to point B? I don't want to say pretty quickly, but in an aggressive timeline.
I think the biggest thing for me was I recognized that I needed to start raising capital for our deals. And the reason I say needed is because um, we were investing a lot of our own money into the deal, and we couldn't stay liquid. If we had the
Mm-hmm.
money, we would buy a property, and then I had to wait until I had more money. We weren't looking at opportunities. We weren't, building the portfolio in a way we really wanted to build it. And there were people I felt like we could help if we knew what to do in that space. So the big thing for me was I hired a coach,
Okay.
and I wasn't hell bent on hiring a coach. It wasn't that I was running around saying I need a coach,
Mm-hmm.
but I started to want to connect with people, and I met a guy for coffee, and he had raised capital for one of his deals, and that's part of what I wanted to talk to him about. And he mentioned that he was taking on clients, and for me, it was like, well, listen, I'm sure I could blow this money on something else. I mean, hell,
Yeah.
I ended up blowing on these damn flip projects,
Flips.
right? I'd rather invest it in some education where at a minimum, I'm going to walk away with some knowledge that I wouldn't have had otherwise, right? From someone
Mm-hmm.
who's actually done it. So that's what I did. And what ended up happening was I watched this person continue to grow and build their portfolio. So as I was implementing some of the stuff that I learned, I continued to watch this person blossom. Like, okay, wait a minute, because I just wanted to raise a little bit for my next deal. I wasn't trying to
Uh-huh.
syndicate. I just wanted to buy another 8 unit or a 12 unit or a 20 unit and have partners bring the money. I wasn't trying to be a syndicator, but I watched this person take a portfolio from 7 million to like 20 million to like 50 million to like 100 million and I was like, wait, what?
What? How are you doing this? Yeah.
What? So at that moment, I had to kind of look at my own goals and say, okay, how do I adjust? And it's not even that. It was just, I think the other piece was like trying to get started. I was trying to do it kind of by myself still. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted people to help me financially, but I was going to manage the deal. And I stepped back and say, well, look, I've now have these investors who are waiting for my next deal. I'm having a hard time finding this next deal. I know other folks who are looking for deals, and I had a friend in particular, and I just talked to him and said, listen, if you find something that makes sense for you, I'd love to partner and maybe bring my investors and help with marketing, investor relations, and things like that. And that's what ended up happening. They found a deal, it was a pretty large deal, 192 units. And that's kind of how we got started, with
Mm-hmm.
some real traction. Was we ended up coming in and being a general partner on that deal. And that really kind of now put us in this space where we're dealing with large scale apartment buildings. So that's kind of where we've been since.
Okay, so um, I know a lot of people coming from the corporate world, you understand, mentorship and coaching. A lot of people that get into real estate investing, they have that limited mindset. I'm not going to pay a coach $20,000 or $25,000 to learn to get that education. What really pushed you over the hump to say, this is really something that I need to do in order to push me forward?
There were a couple things, right? So one was, you know, it wasn't, I didn't pay $20,000. So let's start with that. So
Okay.
that was the first thing. I didn't pay that. So it was much easier for me to say, hey, for what I'm going to get, the investment amount, I think it makes sense. I'm going to tell you what, I know people pay 50 times what I paid. So I'm happy with my investment. It's good.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
With that said, um, I think it was ultimately recognizing the benefit. And that's something where I've grown dramatically as well, because I'm someone who can figure it out. And for that person who's listening, I want to just say this because I'm someone who feels like, hey, I'm savvy enough, I'm smart enough, I'm resourceful enough between the books, the podcasts, the different stuff out there. I can figure it out, and you can figure it out. It may just take you longer,
Yep.
and it's not that you'll have you will have limiting beliefs, but it's not in the sense that I think most of us think about it, right? So let's say your goal is to make $100,000. You might be able to accomplish $100,000, but if you joined a group of folks who are doing millions of dollars of
Mm-hmm.
deals, your goal would change from wanting to make 100,000 to 500,000.
Exactly.
So part of what you make, and again, you can call it paying for coaching, or you can call it investing in your future. And if you're truly finding the right people who can help you invest in your future and provide the opportunities, the connections, the network, the pathway, the blueprint that can help you excel, that's an investment that's going to be worth it. You got to look at the return on investment, just like a real estate deal.
Yep.
Don't look at it as, oh, this is a $5,000, $20,000, or $50,000 program, you got to look at the return on that and ask yourself, anytime you're looking at either coaching or something like that, what's going to be my return? How am I going to get my money back? You know, how long is it going to take? How much work do I need to do? But what's the return? You know, it's not like college. I mean, people drop $100,000 on college without blinking and never ask, well, what am I going to get in return?
And then never use that education.
And then never use it. They never use it. And I'm like I don't get it. So it's the same thing. You got to focus on the return. Don't worry so much about the money. And then I'll say this too, Marcus, because I know a lot of folks, they feel like you know, they feel like that they don't want to help somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yep.
You know, so they don't want to pay somebody else who figured it out. But they happy to pick your brain, you know. And the reality is that when you take a look at the landscape, you know, there's a lot of money, time, and energy invested in getting good. And I have no problem. I do free 30-minute calls every day. Yep. Right. I have another coach who told me, you got to stop doing that. I'm like, nah, man, because people help me starting out and I got no problem for it. But it's 30 minutes. That's it. I can't do it every week with you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like my time is valuable. Like that's tracks for me being able to grow my business and do what I got to do for my family. So ultimately our time is valuable. We have to make sure we get compensated for that. And you have to believe in yourself and you have to value yourself. I think that's a very important aspect of it. And part of valuing yourself is investing in yourself. I mean, my coach, they have coaches, you know, I have a coach, you know, so, I mean, I think Kobe has a coach, you know, you look at the greats, you get into sports, they have coaches, you know why? Because that coach's job is to get the best performance out of the player.
Out of that person.
That's what I look for. You know, it's not about, I don't know how to do this. Somebody please teach me and show me. I mean, that's a small part of it. Ultimately, I'm looking for somebody who can help me accomplish the things I know I can do. You know, in corporate America, you have a boss, right?
Yeah.
That boss is your coach, if you want to call it that. But most of the time, that boss don't care about you. They care about themselves. You just doing busy work to get them together. But in the real world, you know, if you could find someone who can be a great coach or a mentor, whether it's paid or unpaid, really doesn't matter as much. I think the difference is just in the value exchange. You know, if you don't have a lot of value you can give to that individual, then you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more. Or if that person, and value meaning based on where that person is, you know, you come into somebody who is worth $50 million and saying, hey, you know, I can help you with underwriting. They're like, dude, I will pay somebody to do that professionally for me. Like, I'm not going to have you do this for free. So, I mean, the value's got to be in line with what the opportunity is.
Service,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And likewise, I was doing a 30-minute free consultation, but I scaled it down to 15 minutes because my coach was like, hey, you're doing too much, you're giving away too much. But I understand, you know, the value of really helping people get started in the right way. So, John, now you're doing syndication, you're doing these deals. I know you're out in Cincinnati now, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So what took you from Chicago to Cincinnati? Was it a deal? Was it just work transition? Kind of what happened?
So, you know, like any good guy, you know, my wife, her family is here. And when we started talking about where we wanted to be, you know, the wife said she wanted to be closer to home. And we moved closer to home for
so you left Chicago cold to Cincinnati cold, not Miami, not LA.
You know what? It's not that bad here. It's warm. It's fairly warm in Cincinnati. It's normally like 10 to 15 degrees warmer than in Chicago. So it's not too bad. But the other thing, because we actually do own property out this way, and I like I'm closer to the regions of the country that I want to invest in. So I do like Cincinnati as an MSA. I love Indianapolis big time. And Northern Kentucky is another market I like. And there's some stuff in the Southeast. So it's actually a little bit easier for me to commute. And the cost of living is better. So it's easier for me to, you know, just focus on doing our next deal and not feeling like, you know, we got to rush to get the next deal going or anything like that. We could be patient with it. Yeah.
So tell me about the landscape, because I talk to a lot of people and they're saying, you know, the Midwest is absolutely the place to be right now. Do you find that to be the case? And I don't want to give away your secret sauce or anything like that.
Ain't no
But
secrets in this game, man. Ain't no secrets in this game. And if you look, like I said, if you can give away your secrets in a 40-minute discussion, you don't have enough secrets.
You don't have enough. So are you really finding the deals in the Midwest and in the Southeast, or, are you guys looking to explore, in the Western hemisphere of the country, or kind of what's what?
I think you gotta you have to preface that question by talking about what you look for in a deal, right? Especially given where we're at today here in 2019, towards the end of the year, where the economy is a bit frothy, and a lot of folks are saying that we've got a recession coming down the pipeline. You got the yield, the yield curve
inverted,
yield inversion.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, the way I look at it right now, it's important more than ever to focus on buying cash flowing assets. You want to make sure you understand what those cash flowing assets do when there's a pullback on the economy. So if vacancy rates increase, what's going to happen to your projections? If you're not able to get that big pop on an exit, what does that do? Are you running a sensitivity analysis on your deals? So we're looking at all of those things. And the reason I still like the Midwest, I like the Southeast and other parts of the country too. But the thing about the Midwest is it never really appreciated and valued the way these other places did. There hasn't been a crazy influx of capital in the Midwest like there has been in maybe some of the the Texas markets or Southeast, or maybe out West, or even on the East Coast. You just haven't seen that. People aren't flocking to Northern Kentucky. They're not flocking to Southeast Indiana. They're just it's not like an overwhelming, ridiculous amount. I mean, obviously they've all seen increases in investing, but not in comparison to a Dallas, Texas, for instance, or Orlando, Florida, or some of these other markets. So I think that there's still opportunities there. And that's not to disparage like Texas or Florida, anything like that by any means. The point is just simply, if you're looking for something that's stable, the cap rates haven't moved as much in these regions. So they're not going to move as much on the back end either. They're just not going to fluctuate as much. And then because they deliver strong cash flow, it's a great place to park your money, as opposed to, hoping the market does well. So, some of the West Coast scares me a little bit, just because if you look at trends, some of these markets were laggards when it comes to recovery. If you look at some of the Florida markets, some of the Arizona markets, and Nevada in particular. So if you look at some of those markets, they lag the recovery time. So when a recession hit, they got hit kind of the hardest. And those are kind of things you want to keep your eye on. Yes, they're seeing the great metrics we like: population growth, job growth, things like that. But you also have to watch, how elastic are these markets? How well do they respond in a recession? How much demand or how much fluidity is there? What are the industries driving it? If it's tourism, well, guess what? In a recession, tourism drops. When you think about healthcare and education, well, guess what? In a recession, those increase. So we're looking at markets where healthcare, education, and other recession-proof industries are really driving the fundamentals, because I think those are going to do extremely well in any kind of downturn. So that's why I like some of them. And it's not the Midwest as a blanket statement, but that's why I choose the markets I choose. And I like the Cincy market. I like Indianapolis, and I like a few in the Southeast as well.
So are you ever concerned with those economic drivers of the decrease in certain populations, in the Midwest?
Yeah, we focus on population first and foremost still. So that's why, again, I love Chicago. It's a great place to visit, to live. But from an investing standpoint, my one caveat is always you have to pay attention to the numbers. People are leaving the state of Illinois and leaving the city of Chicago. So you need to monitor that and understand how that may impact your rents. At the end of the day, the only thing we're really trying to measure is rental demand. That's it. Current rental demand and future rental demand. And there are a lot of factors that play into it. But that's what we're really trying to figure out is, hey, is there going to be more rental demand for my property? Not in general. I don't care if 1 million people move to the city if there's going to be 1,000,010 new apartments, right?
Gotcha.
1,000,010 new apartments are going to drop my rents. So that doesn't help me. I had a guy I was talking to. He invests primarily on the south side of Chicago. He's like, listen, I love it because demand's increasing because of blight. I'm like, yeah, that's not really a sound strategy though. He's like, yeah, they're just knocking, they're losing buildings, right? So they're just like taking buildings out. And he's like, yeah, so there's more demand because there's less places to actually rent. I had a guy yesterday out here in Dayton. I forgot there was a tornado not too long ago. And he's like, well, the tornado took out some of the properties as well. So, there's natural disasters and things like that. But again, I don't want to be morbid and look at the negative side of things by any means. But the point is, ultimately, what you're looking at when it comes to these numbers, it's rental demand. And that's what you're trying to do. And obviously, growth is way better than, rental demand by default because they've knocked down the other properties. That's not really a sustaining strategy because demand is not really increasing. It's just, you're the last one left in the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's not a long-term strategy.
Right. So tell me, what do you think was your most creative deal, John?
Most creative deal. We haven't been that creative, man. I'm trying to think here.
But what do you feel it was your most successful deal? I understand the first one, getting started with the house hack, was the launching point. But outside of that, what do you think, really pushed you into the direction that you wanted to go into?
So I wouldn't say this is the most successful deal, but as far as pushing us in the direction, the 8-unit I think was very critical because first and foremost, we've done a 2-unit, we've done a 3-unit deal. The 8-unit was our first commercial deal. And while it's still 8 units, it's not like it's 100 units or something like that. It did force us to go through the process, and I was able to go through the process on a small scale, and it showed me a lot when it comes to working with property management companies, managing an asset and things like that. And then it also helped me tap into the skill set that I already had. You think of work with a property management company and think that they're so professional and they know what they're doing, they're so buttoned up. And sometimes, again, you might discount your own experience. Well, I worked for a large Fortune 500 company, and I'd overseen hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing dollars. I know a thing or two about putting together systems and processes and teams and all of that. So I would come in, and while I didn't have any property management experience, I'm like, you should have a checklist of what a unit turn looks like. Like, this shouldn't be based on whoever showed up for the day and their thoughts on what a clean turn looks like. This should be a checklist. So I had to create a checklist. So there are things like that kind of gave me the comfort to basically say, don't be intimidated by the bigness. That was really my thing, because it opened me up to say, oh, okay, it's not like these property managers, these other people really are that far above you. These are people. They're people.
Exactly.
They're people and they're workers. Most of the time they're employees, and they hate their job, and they just doing that, doing the job they got to do anyway to get their check. So it helped me understand from a business standpoint that it's okay to play big, to be big, and to make the big decisions. So when you get into a 100+ unit deal, operate that thing the way you need to operate it. Don't worry about somebody else's 20 years experience. Like, come in, and if you see something needs to be done the right way, then come in and tell them to do it the right way, and having that confidence in yourself. And just, I think it really kind of empowered me to play at that next level when I started to recognize what was working in that deal, what wasn't working in that deal, and ultimately just owning accountability for it, and just recognizing that, listen, it's up to you at all times to make the right decisions and put your investors and other folks in a position to be successful.
So what do you think? Because I know your mentor, your coach really was a driving influence in your life, in your business career. What do you think is that one thing that he may have imparted into you to really push you forward?
There's more than one thing, but I think the one thing was really in watching his actions. One of the things that there's the learning and all of that, but watching the actions and watching what was working and talking to him about it and getting into the details on some of it. I think ultimately launching a podcast is a huge thing, so I know a lot of folks are looking to launch a podcast, and I was in a position where I didn't want to do a podcast. I was completely against it. I'm actually more of a private person. I don't really like to be out in front and sharing all my business and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I did it for a couple of reasons. One, I know I needed to put myself out there if you want to attract capital for your deals, people have to know who you are. You know, they're
Yeah,
not going to invest in you if
absolutely.
they don't know who you are. That's the first part of it, right?
Yep.
And just trying to call friends and family and folks that I worked with, well, I mean, that only can take you so far, right? Because
Exactly.
they want to see you succeed before they invest. I mean, don't worry, get me
Hmm.
wrong. I mean, grandma might put some money in your pocket and trust you, but
Right.
a lot of folks want to wait and see,
Yeah, they
wait and
want to
see
see
approach.
your track record.
They want to see the track record. So it's kind of, it's a challenge starting out, because a lot of folks will tell you, oh, go to friends and family and you'll get it. And again, it depends on who you are and the connections you
Hmm.
have, but you may need to build a new network, and I needed to build a new network. So that was part of it. But then also I wanted to really educate myself more on how to find the best places to invest. So that really became the platform that allowed me to do it. And I think that really opened up the doors, opened up my eyes to how to grow as an individual, how to put yourself out there, and ultimately how to drive success and build a business.
Okay. So John, 85 million, man, in assets that you're managing and operating. Man, what's next? I mean, where can you go from here?
Yeah, so there's a lot next. I think the first thing is, continue down that path and that trajectory, right? So I mean, there are a couple deals that I'm looking at now. We want to be pretty thorough in our due diligence, but if the deals work, we'd love to bring them into the portfolio. We're looking to grow and continue to help more people. I think sometimes investors get caught up on assets under management. For
Hmm.
starters, we're general partners, so we actually have other operators who lead a lot of the day to day. So we have some deals we lead, other deals where they kind of take the lead, and we're more general partners helping behind the scenes type stuff. So we want to do more deals where we're kind of the lead operator, but then also it's really less about the number of
You,
millions under
mhm.
management or the number of units. And I look at it as, how many people are you helping, right? How many
Yep.
people are you helping either earn passive income, save on their taxes, diversify their portfolio, get into different markets, educate on real estate as an investment vehicle. So I really look at it less on the assets under management and more about the number of people we can impact, because I think the business ultimately is a people business. And if I focus on helping people, I'm obviously going to benefit from that, but it's got to start
Hmm.
with me being able to provide real value for the folks.
And that's good, and that's actually a good segue into my next question. And we're almost wrapping up here, but how do you feel your investing is impacting the community where you operate in?
Yeah, man, I think it's a couple things. So first and foremost, we're trying to impact these communities by improving the quality of life, improving the neighbors, improving the housing units, and then I think the other part is like trying to create opportunities for other folks to learn more about it. I try to share as much as we do. Between the podcast, we have our monthly meetup as well, and the annual conference you mentioned.
Hmm.
I have a sample deal right now. So if anybody goes to our website, casmoncapital.com/sample deal, you can actually see what a sample deal package would look like. So if you're trying to put together your own deal or you want to learn more about syndication, you can actually download this and get a sense of, what would need to be included. Or if you're a passive investor and you want to take a look at what a deal would look like before you actually get on the phone with somebody who's like, how much money you got?
Hmm.
That's another great way to start to educate yourself before jumping too deep into it. So just sharing information. I try to just share it both with the online community, the podcast community, as well as the physical community with the investments we're making.
Great, great, great. And I'm sure, turning some of those assets around, from lower class assets to higher class assets definitely helps the community. So always want to make sure there's an impact. So John, kind of wrapping up here, man, we're going to go into our tie it all together section, our hot seat questions, man. So real quickly, let's start running here. So starting over, what do you think you would do different?
Never do flips. Always do multifamily and partner with others.
Okay. What do you think is the greatest commodity outside of capital?
Deals.
Okay. All right. And what is one thing you could do to be more productive?
Time block.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Hey, have you ever used Pomodoros?
I haven't.
Man, it's basically time blocking. When you get a chance, just kind of look it up, man. I use it and it transitioned my whole day, honestly.
Okay. What's it called again?
Pomodoros, P-O-R-M-O-D-O-R-S, something like that.
Okay.
And then what drives you? What's your ambition? What drives your ambition?
Legacy, man. Just generational impact and legacy.
Okay. All right. And what's the latest business book you've read?
Ooh, what am I listening to right now? I'm listening to The One Thing. So
Gotcha.
I do a little combination of Audible and physical books, but right now I'm listening to The One Thing. But the last one really, I mean, that one's obviously impacted me, but the one I always tell people is Atomic Habits by James Clear. That book right there that's a phenomenal book that I advise everybody to check out. If there's anything, business or not, just personal, any habit that you're trying to work on, it's a great book to help you figure out the right process to change your life and move in the right direction.
Gotcha. I got that one wrote down and circled, man. The One Thing is really good. So I just finished that one. So definitely know where you're at with that one. So, and then what's the latest real estate book that you've read?
Man.
You got tons of them back there. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't know if I've read a pure real estate book in a while. I mean, I read Joe's book. So, the Best Ever Apartment Syndication book by Joe Fairless and Theo Hicks. That's probably the last one I've really read. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect, man. So, John, it was my pleasure, man. I know that you have the Target Market Insight podcast. How can we find you other than the podcast?
Yeah, check out the podcast. It's a great way to get more information, stay in touch with us and all that. You can go to our website, casmoncapital.com, and then you can reach me via email as well. I'm at john@casmoncapital.com.
Okay, and guys, I'll have all of that information in the show notes below. All of that information will be there. Actually, go and check out that sample deal packet. I downloaded it last week and was kind of going over it because I'm making my transition from smaller, multifamily units to get into some larger projects, man. So it was a good way, for me to do some education and do some research. So, John, man, there's nothing else. I want to appreciate you being here and speaking to our family, the W.L.E.R.E Equity Real Estate Show family. And it was my pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to today's show. I picked up some great actionable items, and I'm sure you did as well. If so, let me know. You can always reach me via social media at facebook.com/MRCS Maloney, Twitter at MRCS Maloney, and of course, IG at MRCS Maloney. You can also always reach me via email at mmaloney@equityri.com. Make sure you reach out to our guest as well. You can always find their contact information in the show notes below. If you have not subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Join the family. And while you're at it, leave us a 5-star review. This is how we tell if we're providing you with what you need for your journey. If there's someone you would like for me to interview, or if there's a subject matter you would like for me to cover, please let me know. Finally, if you're looking for additional information about real estate investing, go to equityrealestateblog.com. Also, youtube.com/Marcus Maloney. Until next time, family, always enjoy the journey.